Algebra 1, Algebraic fractions. Type 3, Factorizing. So in the examples today, we're going to be looking at factorizing our denominators first before we look at the lowest common denominator in order to simplify our fractions. So if we look at the first one here, we have 1 over x squared plus 3x plus 2 plus 4 over x plus 2 minus 3 over x plus 1. So let's take that onto the next page. So the first thing we want to do is put brackets around everything. And then we're going to take our quadratic out and we're going to factorize our quadratic. So we have x squared plus 3x plus 2. So we say, well, our coefficient of x squared is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. And the factors that multiply to give us 2 that add to give us 3x, this middle coefficient here, must be 2 and 1. So if I put that back in, we have x squared plus 2x plus x plus 2. So in other words, we've basically expanded our 3x into our 2x plus x. And we're going to group the first two and to get the highest common factor, leaving us with x plus 2. Group the second two and to get the highest common factor, which is plus 1. And that leaves us with x plus 2. So again, we have highest common factor, second time here is x plus 2. So if I take out x plus 2 as being common, that leaves me with x plus 1. So now if I take x squared plus 3x plus 2 and I replace that with the factorized version, x plus 2 by x plus 1, it now becomes a lot easier to see what my lowest common denominator is. Now, if we found that there was nothing common there on the bottom, we would just basically take all our denominators and multiply them. But I can clearly see that my lowest common denominator there is x plus 2 by x plus 1. So that means I multiply the top and the bottom for each of these fractions by my lowest common denominator. So to make the denominator in the first fraction there, x plus 2 by x plus 1, I don't have to do anything. So that's just going to stay as 1 over x plus 2 by x plus 1, plus, in the second fraction here, we have 4 over x plus 2. So if I want the denominator to be x plus 2 by x plus 1, that means I must multiply the top by x plus 1 and the bottom, by x plus 1. So in other words, I've multiplied the top and the bottom there by x plus 1, so I haven't changed the value of the fraction, because it's the same as multiplying by 1. The third fraction there then is minus 3 over x plus 1. So I need to multiply the top and the bottom there by x plus 2 to get the common denominator there to be x plus 1 by x plus 2. Okay, so x plus 1 by x plus 2 is the same as x plus 2 by x plus 1. So we can now see that if I take the numerators, which is 1 plus 4 by x plus 1 minus 3 times x plus 2, that can be written all over x plus 2 by x plus 1, because all of those denominators are now the same. So once we have a common denominator, we can add the numerators. So to simplify and tidy up, we then have on the next line 1 plus 4 times x plus 1, which is 4x plus 4, minus 3 times x plus 2, which is minus 3x minus 6, and that's all over x plus 2 by x plus 1. So last line then we have is 4x minus 3x, which is x, and 1 plus 4, which is 5, and 5 minus 6 is minus 1. So that gives me x minus 1 over x plus 2 by x plus 1. So there is nothing common between the top and the bottom there. So therefore that is my fraction in its simplest form. Okay. So part 2 looks like it's already a single fraction in its simplest form. But if we look closer, what we can see is that we can actually factorize the top by taking out x as being common, which leaves me then with x minus y. And we can also factorize the bottom because we should spot that it's the difference of two squares. And therefore that gives me x plus y times x minus y. So I'm just going to say ... x squared minus y squared is equal to x plus y by x minus y. So that's our difference of two squares. And remember, we don't have that in our maths tables. We need to spot that offhand, okay? And now what we can see is that on the top and the bottom, I can divide everything on the top by x minus y. So if I divide the top by x minus y, that leaves me with x. And if I divide the bottom by x minus y, that leaves me with x plus y. So remember, if I'm dividing a fraction on the top by something, I have to do the same to the bottom. So every term must be divisible by x minus y. And therefore that is my fraction in its simplest form. So please note that we cannot divide the x there on the top and the bottom, because I would have to divide everything by the denominator there, which is x plus y. So x over x plus y is the simplified answer. So part 3. So I always love this question because I love asking it in class. Does anyone see what the lowest common denominator is? And inevitably, we put brackets around everything before we start. And a student would normally say, well, the lowest common denominator there is x minus 5 by 5 minus x. And we go, okay, yeah, fair enough, that's right. You know, because if we take the two denominators there and we multiply them, that will give us our lowest common denominator. And then I would normally say, well, does anyone spot anything else that we could do that would make this a little bit of a quicker solution? So what somebody should spot then is that x minus 5 and 5 minus x are very similar because they have the same constant and same variable, but just different signs. So a nice little trick here with this question, when the denominator is the same variable, same constant, but opposite signs, is to actually factorize out minus 1 as being a factor. So if we take out minus 1 there, what happens is the denominator all of a sudden becomes x minus 5, because minus 1 times x is minus x, and minus 1 times minus 5 is plus 5. And now what we can see is that the lowest common denominator is actually just x minus 5. So rather than doing this one up here is the alternative, it's a little bit longer that way, we can actually just take out the minus 1, and we've got a much nicer question. So we have 2x minus 3 minus 1 as our numerator all over x minus 5, which simplifies then on the top to be 2x minus 4 over x minus 5 as our answer. Okay, lovely little question that. Okay, so let's look at the next type then. So that was type 3, so we're going to do type 4 next. So type 4 is where we're going to be dividing fractions. And just as a little recap of some very basic fractions, if we have, say, 1 over 3 divided by 1 over 9, then in order to simplify this fraction, we have to do the same to the top as we do to the bottom. So if we want to get rid of this denominator here, what we would have to do is multiply the denominator by 9 over 1, which is known as the reciprocal. And that's because if I multiply 1 over 9 by 9 over 1, we get 9 over 9, which is of course 1. And therefore we now have the denominator eliminated. But I can't just multiply the denominator by 9 over 1. I must multiply the numerator by 9 over 1 as well, because 9 over 1 over 9 over 1 is the same as multiplying by 1. So we always have to do the same to the top as we do to the bottom, so we do not change the value of the fraction. So therefore what that leaves us with then is 1 over 3 by 9 over 1 all over 1. In other words, 1 times 9 is 9, 3 times 1 is 3, and divided by 1 is just 9 over 3, and 9 over 3 then is 3. So in other words, whenever we divide a fraction, we take the bottom fraction, turn it upside down, and multiply. In other words, we multiply the numerator by the reciprocal of the denominator. Because that always results in the denominator being 1. So a lot of the times we kind of skip this middle line. So let's have a look at an example. So we're going to write 4x plus 3 over x squared minus 49 all over 16x squared minus 9 over x minus 7 in its simplest form. So in other words, we're dividing the top line there by the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually look and see, can we factorize anything first? So like what we were doing in the last example. And we should spot there that on the bottom of the top fraction we have x squared minus 49, which is of course the difference of two squares. So we have x plus 7 by x minus 7. So in other words, x squared minus 49 is x to be squared minus 7 to be squared, which is of course the difference of two squares. And then on the denominator there we have 16x squared minus 9, which is also difference of two squares, because that's 4x to be squared minus 3 to be squared. So therefore that's 4x plus 3 by 4x minus 3. And that's all over x minus 7. So here what we have is a fraction divided by a fraction. So we saw there a second ago that what we need to do is we need to multiply the numerator, which is 4x plus 3 over x plus 7 by x minus 7. And we're going to multiply that by the reciprocal of the denominator. So the reciprocal of the denominator means I take the denominator and I turn it upside down. So that's x minus 7 all over 4x plus 3 by 4x minus 3. So now I could multiply out the top line and multiply out the bottom line. But what you should spot is there, if I look at the numerators and the denominators, I can divide the top and the bottom by x minus 7. So that goes in once. And I can divide 4x plus 3 into 4x plus 3. That also goes once. So that leaves me with 1 times 1 on the top line there, which is just 1. And on the bottom line, I'm left with x plus 7 by 4x minus 3. So that is my fraction in its simplest form. So when dividing fractions, we take the denominator, turn it upside down and multiply. And of course then if we can factorize at any point, make sure we do that. So therefore we can get it into its simplest form. So for type 5 complex fractions, what we have is a fraction within a fraction. And the best way to solve these is to actually multiply the top and the bottom by the lowest common denominator of the denominators. So here we have 5 minus 5 over y. So the lowest common denominator on the top there would be y. But if you look at the bottom fraction, the lowest common denominator is also y. So our lowest common denominator for the top and the bottom is y. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the top by y, and we're going to multiply the bottom by y. So if I multiply the top by y and the bottom by y, I haven't changed the value of the fraction. So if I multiply the top by y, I get 5y minus 5y over y, which is of course just 5. And on the bottom, if I multiply by y, I get 1 times y, which is y, minus y times 1 over y, which is of course 1. Now, this might look like it's simplified, but if we look, the top has 5 as being a common factor. And if I take out 5 as being a common factor, we're left with y minus 1 over y minus 1. And this is a really nice question because y minus 1 divides into y minus 1, leaving us with 5, a constant. So sometimes in these questions in the Leaving Cert, it would actually have started with write 5 minus 5 over y over 1 minus 1 over y in its simplest form. And it might even say, show it simplifies to a constant. Okay, so that's often a little add-on, and then you would say 5 is a constant. Done. Okay, so what are we doing now in class? So we're going to go to page 14, and you're going to do question 10, 11, 14, 15, 22, 23, 25, 29, and on page 16 you're going to do question 3, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 16 and 17. And then if there's any questions, please make sure you just send me a message on Teams and I can do out solutions for the questions and post them to the class. Okay?